Welcome to Bird Camp Radio, where the coveys rise from the high pines, marsh valleys, sagebrush seas, and the shelf rock ledges. Here at camp, the fire's always glowing, the dogs are never far, and the stories of birds, wild places, and the upland life are just beginning. This is Bird Camp Radio. Before we get into today's episode, I want to thank a company Rachel and I personally trust, Pet Commute. We have worked with them several times ourselves, and I can tell you firsthand, they are reliable, safe, punctual, and they give frequent transport updates. That peace of mind matters, especially when it's your dog. If you're a breeder, buyer, trainer, running field dog trials, traveling to a hunt, or honestly just need to get a pet somewhere safely, Pet Commute is a perfect fit for bird dog folks. They offer free transportation quotes, and make sure to mention Bird Camp Radio to get 10% off your pet's travel. Check the link in the show notes, our social media bios, or the comments. I highly recommend them. Welcome back, everyone, to the Bird Camp Radio Podcast. I'm your host, Kellen Golightly, and we're excited to be here for episode 43 with Edward Pierre Gagne. Today, he sent in his bio, and I'm going to read that for us real quick. Eddie Pierre Gagne, who goes by Eddie, is a 40-year-old upland hunter from Vermont whose passion for bird hunting was rekindled in his 30s after years of focusing on deer and turkey hunting. Ironically, it was the pursuit of snipe that reignited his love. Today, Eddie pursues nearly every feathered game species, often using duck decoys he has handcrafted or shotguns that he has personally restored with custom-made wood stocks. A devoted side-by-side shotgun enthusiast, he hunts almost exclusively with classic doubles and proudly represents the tradition of the dogless upland hunter. For more than 20 years, Eddie has volunteered with Ducks Unlimited, including serving as Vermont state chairman. Each fall, he also guides snipe hunts on Lake Champlain and spends time chasing grouse and woodcock throughout Vermont, Maine, and New Hampshire. Beyond the hunt, Eddie is passionate about honoring the game he harvests by preparing and eating everything he shoots. He enjoys experimenting with wild game recipes and sharing those meals with family and friends, believing that good food and good company are an important part of the hunting tradition. Eddie, we're excited to have you on, man. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Hey, we're excited to have you on and get to know a little bit more. Maybe get some good recipes. I'm always down for a good recipe.
Yep.
But I get a kick out of the old side-by-sides, double barrels, everything like that. So that's going to be fun to dig into today.
Yep.
But before we get started, we got to play a quick game of rapid fire around the campfire with you.
Nice.
For the ones that don't know how this works, this is a game of 10 questions. We do have a leaderboard, so it is timed. So everything can be answered with one word or just one word or nothing more. And it's all of a speed event. So you ready?
I'm ready.
Sweet. Here we go, man. Get this set. All right, here we go. Favorite wild bird to chase?
Woodcock.
Most challenging bird?
Rough grouse right now.
Favorite dog trait?
Methodical, I guess.
Best bird for eating?
Snipe.
Go-to field snack?
Granola bars.
Dream hunting destination?
Mississippi for quail.
Favorite month to hunt?
October.
Game bag or vest?
Vest.
Solo hunt or with a group?
Group.
Lead or still shot?
Lead.
Oh, there we go. That's looking good. That's looking good.
I was prepping. Yeah, I was prepping some answers in my head on the way home this weekend. So yeah.
I think that's gonna pay off. We'll release that at the end of the podcast, but I think it's looking pretty good.
Good deal.
Sweet, man.
If I'm not good, I'm fast.
Hey, that's right. I mean, hey, that's all that matters. I love it, dude. So I mean, for the ones that are maybe new to the podcast, for the ones that already know, here on the Bird Camp Radio podcast, we like to bring guys on from all walks of life, um, from all sorts of different parts of the country to Canada, and to talk about upland game, what you do with an upland game, and why you continue to stick with the tradition, and just going throughout your life of everything that you've done that's led you to this point in your life. So, kind of just getting started. Where did hunting and everything kind of begin for you um, to get you to this point?
Oh, that's a loaded question. There's a lot there. So uh, started out as doing small game and stuff. My dad was a big deer hunter, and we've got a small dairy farm up in the northwestern Vermont. So when he got me started, it was an 870 20 gauge. Well, before that, a pellet gun and small game, and then started me getting out to deer hunt, and that was his thing, or is still his thing. Um, and then did that for quite a while. Had some buddies in high school that duck hunted, and we had plenty of grouse on the farm at the time, and so you'd shoot. We call them partridge up here, rough grouse. That's their New England nickname. So shooting partridge, and then started into duck hunting, and was real interested there. And then about the right when I was getting out of high school, or just before the end of high school, we finally started having turkeys back in this part of the state. So I believe it was mid 1800s that turkeys were extirpated from Vermont. So when we got them back, they had been southern part of the state, I think in the 1970s, and they finally worked their way up to where I'm at, close to the Canadian border, and they just took off. The first year there was 8 or 9 around, then 35, then 80, then separate flocks of 80, and it boomed, and it was a real kind of a big deal, and not that many people did it. So I kind of veered, and at roughly the same time, the habitat had changed, so you didn't have the early successional stuff that grouse relied on, so they almost kind of disappeared. And then when the turkeys finally came in, they kind of took over, and then we haven't had a grouse on the farm since like 2016.
Wow.
Yeah, and we're trying to get some of that back, and I'll get into that a little bit later. But so yeah, I kind of switched. Deer hunting kind of not really lost a lot of interest. I really enjoyed doing that with my dad, but have been doing that with rifles and then small game, and then moved to duck hunting and turkey hunting kind of towards the end of high school. And the duck hunting thing really kind of took off. I had some good spots. We had some really good years. And I also I'd always been interested in art. And I did the federal junior duck stamp, which is like the federal stamp program only for people 18 and under. So I had done that and painted, throughout high school, and did really well. And then had a sports injury and had to be laid up for a little while, and picked up a carving kit. So then that kind of paired with duck hunting, where I was carving a decoy and then getting the chance to hunt over it. So that kind of really started that passion, and it kind of spiraled out of control from there. Once you get to like the finer points of some of these things, if you carve your own decoys, then inevitably somebody goes, well, have you ever seen this this gun with barrels side by side? No, but well, that's kind of neat, so let me see if I can buy one of them. So really the duck hunting thing took over for a long time, and that's fun. I'm still an avid duck hunter and an avid turkey hunter. I spend 20 to 25 days out of the month of May turkey hunting, 3 different states. It's real nice living up here in Vermont, where New York is 40 minutes away, New Hampshire's under 2 hours, and Maine is just over 2 hours. So I can hunt a bunch of states, and put a lot of turkey meat in the freezer. Have a good time doing it, bringing people out doing that. So kind of got around to, though that filled my fall for a long time. And up here on Lake Champlain, we have different zones. So the lake, most of the big part of the lake, which at one point they considered it was the sixth Great Lake. It's huge. They have a northern end that they broke off from the lake zone and turned into interior. We used to have a split in between, but in the course of jump shooting ducks along a couple bays, you'd push up some birds, and you'd wonder, okay, well, what are these things? Are they yellow legs? Are they shorebirds? What are they? Some of them don't fly the same, um, and I honestly I don't know what triggered me to investigate it, but I learned that they were Wilson snipe, and in Vermont we can shoot 8 a day.
Wow.
Um, yeah, and the season runs through what I was talking about with that split. So you used to be able to, you couldn't do anything on the lake. Like goose season was shut down, duck season was shut down, and then it was either a 10 or 20 day split whatever year it was, and you couldn't really get out to hunt. So it was around probably 2015 when I kind of figured out what snipe were and figured out that you could hunt them and where they might be. And then shot one or two, didn't really know what to do with them, and shot them with duck loads or whatever when I was out. And then in 2018, I decided I'm going to try to specifically hunt these things. And I ended up having like the best case of beginner's luck. I had shot an 8 bird limit in 45 minutes. And I was like, okay, these are cool, they're fun, they're really sporting, and sometimes they come down in like coveys, and you'll bump 3 to 10 at a time. So that kind of that was the spark that got me back kind of into more upland birds. You could I guess you could consider those more like a waterfowl, but they're cousins with a woodcock, so call them upland, right? Um, so at the time, I'd been shooting a big 32-inch barreled 12 gauge, one of the Connecticut shotgun RBL guns, so a side by side. And then, like as with any hunting venture, you get excited about something. It's like, okay, what do I buy now so that I can kind of look the part of doing this new thing? So that and a couple other things that led me down to sub gauge guns and other side by sides. And then when I found you could buy big old American side by sides for less than you could buy sub gauges, then I started buying turkey guns, big long barreled 10 and 12 gauge turkey guns. And then now I've got a really nice 20 gauge Fox Sterlingworth with big open chokes, short barrels. That's my upland gun, and that's a blast to carry. So that's kind of the long of it of where I am now. So
That's awesome, man. 1 minute. I'm gonna check. We have snipes, but I'm making sure. I just want to see this for myself real quick. If I'm thinking of the right. Wilson snipe is what you said?
yeah,
Let me see. Let's see here. Oh, whoa, that's different than what I was expecting. Okay.
they're cool birds. They're fascinating things.
So they do mimic kind of the look of a woodcock almost.
Yep.
Okay, okay. So our look of a snipe is a lot different, I guess. I guess we have. Let me see.
Are you thinking of like a rail? Do you guys get rails out there?
That may be what. Let's see. Let's see. It may be what it is. No, Honestly, I don't even know what it is now. I'm gonna have to look into this and figure it out. But that's that's awesome. Okay, I learned something. Okay, a
Yeah.
Wilson snipe, kind of, and you said they're cousins to the woodcock, right? Or
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm not an ornithologist, but it's very related to a snipe or a woodcock.
okay,
They're
that's really
and they're quite similar in size. Like if you get you know, like a younger male woodcock in the fall and a mature snipe, they're pretty close in
okay.
size. Yeah, yeah. The young of the year will be fairly, you know, smaller. Um, but yeah, the good when we get some really good full fat snipe come down early November, right before our season ends. And if like I had a couple years ago, I had a good hunt where um, we had gone with a buddy. We went to a woodcock and grouse cover, and we should have had the trifecta. We should have had a grouse. We missed a couple, but we got a woodcock. And then I said, well, why don't we go over to my spot on the lake and we'll see if we can get a snipe. And we did. We got a couple, and I had gotten one really good one. And I have a photos of on my Instagram of them side by side. And then I don't know. I think I have it. It might be a long time ago on my Instagram, but I've got a cast iron frying pan, a photo that there's three snipe and a woodcock in it. And I always, when in conversation with people about these things, I'm like, well, which one do you think is the woodcock? And they always pick the giant snipe that I've got in there.
really.
Yeah, yeah. So
That is all-
they're cool, fun birds. So like I mentioned, we can shoot 8 a day up here. I've got a couple of spots where um, at certain times, I would imagine they're similar to a woodcock migration. If they get proper barometric pressure and temperatures and moon, you'll get a bunch of them that'll show up. Um, and same thing when you hear people talk about like flight birds, and if you ever get into a woodcock cover and you put up a woodcock and you don't shoot him, but he only goes 5-10 feet off the ground and then 50 yards and then lands again, he's probably pretty tired. They fly like 300-400 miles in a night or something like that at the treetop level. So I would imagine the snipe do the same thing. Like I said, I'm not an ornithologist; these are just theories. But um, I've run into them in groups up to, I think the largest group I came across was 10, and they were all in like a less than 15 square foot area. Um, and it was funny. I had brought out some guys that were new to it, and where we are in Lake Champlain, it's just like any marsh area, you get a plethora of different shorebirds. So identifying, a bird with real long legs that's camo and color and brown and white underside, there's I don't know, there's like 15 of those that are there. So you gotta really know. And then so I was teaching them, you gotta usually when a snipe comes up, they flush. The yellow legs will kind of watch you and just you know they're not real nervous, and that's probably why so many shorebirds were annihilated 150 years ago, because they just stand there and look at you. So that's like my first. Whenever I tell anybody, like, if you're out here hunting these things, and you see one, it's probably not a snipe. Like they don't let you. I've only ever spotted maybe three snipe um, before they flushed. So if you see
Wow.
one, it's if you see a bird walking around, it's probably not a snipe. And then, like, the second thing is if it flushes, it probably is a snipe. If it stands there and lets you get real close to it, it's not. But the problem is that those things live really tight together. So you could be almost stepping on a snipe while within 30 feet of a yellow legs or I really don't know many of the names of the other shorebirds that are up here. I probably should study it more, but it's either snipe or no, not snipe, and I'm only really concerned with the snipe. So yeah, those are kind of, I wouldn't call it my like upland identity now, but I do bring guys out to do that. In Vermont, there's no like registration for guides. You can kind of freelance and do what you want. So I don't like charge money for guys that go out. Usually just tell them they got to bring lunch. Bring me something to eat or donuts or breakfast or coffee or something like that, and I'll bring you out and show you. Um, And then what I do, uh, what would be my actually guiding thing is for Ducks Unlimited, we do a national trip auction every year, and I've been putting up a hunt, so it's like a 2 day thing. There's an Airbnb that I do some lawn maintenance for,
Okay.
um, and then basically just a trade. So I take care of our lake will rise 10 feet in water level every year, and it'll bring in a bunch of logs and sticks and brush and stuff. So the guiding that I do
Yeah.
um, is, like I said, so I rent this Airbnb. They donate 2 nights to this Ducks Unlimited hunt, and I'll do their lakefront cleanup. So, like I said, our lake rises 10 feet throughout the year from the spring, brings in a bunch of logs and sticks, and I'll go down with a Kubota and clean it all up for them. And that takes me a couple days. So we trade that work, and then I get this Airbnb. And the best part about this place is it sits on top of like an historic snipe roost. You couldn't have picked a better place. Like the lawn that extends from the bank to the marsh is where the snipe roost when they come in. So really neat spot. And the first year that I donated this hunt and did it, I took some guys from New York City, area, and they brought in a really nice bottle of wine and some like seafood dip or something, some fancy crackers, and we brought the Adirondack chairs down to the shoreline. And I'd been telling them, for a couple of days, I'm like, man, I've burned some rubber on some boots, and I found 2 birds for you guys to hunt, and I'm hoping that some will come in tonight. And while we're sitting there drinking and having fancy crackers, I don't know, it was like 5 or 6 snipe come flying in from wherever they came from, and we had one split the chairs, like right between me and another guy, come screaming through and land, I don't know, 10, 15 feet away. Um, so that was a really cool experience the first time I did it. So I've done that for 4 years now, taking different guys. Had some guys from Georgia last year that came up, and those guys shot lights out. That was fun to see because we had a drought up our way and the lake level was really low. And I went and got a couple years ago, I secured like 250 acres of wet fields permissions to guide on, and that field it was so dry that all the cover, the farmer actually mowed it and turned it into hay. Um,
Oh wow.
so yeah, it was something else. So anyway, that's been a ton of fun. They're cool birds to chase. A lot of times you can kind of control them too. If they flush and re-land, you can work. So, but around to the fact that I don't have a dog, these are tactics that I've come up with for hunting some of these things, and they like to be right on the grass line. So if the water, on a perfect year, if the water level is right where the grass starts, you're going to have snipe in these bays, especially if it's a silty bottom. So you can, if you flush them and then they go a couple hundred yards and land, you mark the spot and you get way in behind them in the grass, and you work the grass towards the water line. And then when you bump them out, they'll do they kind of take off like a woodcock. They're kind of frantic, and they do like a serpentine, and they'll juke around, and you let them get all that out of their system, and then they'll do this nice big clean sweeping arc one way or another. And you wait till they get out there, and they're not very big, so they look like they're a ways, but they're still under, well under 35 yards. So you wait till they get on their big arc, and you pop them out of the air that way on a nice clean lead, and that way you don't have to look through, chest high grass to find them afterward, because that's almost impossible, even with a dog. I mean, I've had some dogs that really good dogs, and it's just so thick, and they can't bust through it to get their noses. They smell it, but they can't get anywhere near them.
Right.
So that was like my beginning back into upland, and that's been a ton of fun chasing those. And um, through that, I had met a couple guys that were big grouse and woodcock guys. And like I said, we hadn't had grouse on the farm, since around 2016, and it was one male that tried to establish territory, and he'd follow you around during bow season. And I'm like, man, there's like one here. I'm not going to shoot him. I'm hoping that he finds a female or something, and they start repopulating the area. Um, so I had found a couple guys, and there was a guide up in what we call the Northeast Kingdom. So if you're looking at the map of Vermont, it's the far eastern side and up towards the Canadian border, and that chunk of the state is still relatively undeveloped. And there's larger tracts. There's a big refuge up there. There's some larger tracts at timberland still. Um, so I got into with a guide up there that runs setters, English setters, and phenomenal guy and great dogs. I'm so spoiled when I get to go out with him. So then I did that a couple times, and like, I don't know, we had 3 hunts and we had 3 woodcock limits and got chances at grouse and 1 fall. So that was like, all right, I gotta get more serious about this and then figure out what I'm gonna do. And we had a dog for a while. We put him down back on Valentine's Day, and he was not a hunting dog, just a house dog. Um, so I didn't end up getting into a hunting dog, but it developed tactics on how to be. I don't know what you call it, bushwhacker. Instead of sending the dog in the crap, I got to go in there and dig the birds out, and then it's just a different way of looking at it. You don't have a dog to retrieve or smell the bird when it goes down, so you got to pay a lot more attention on when you do shoot, that you mark the bird where it is and where it goes down and do a thorough search till you find it. And you got to kind of block out, like if you flush anything else, don't worry about it. You've got one down. Don't think about the other missed birds. And I don't seem to ever have any trouble of worrying about too much of that. I'm happy with if I get one in a day doing that, because it's a ton of work. But yeah, so that's kind of where I'm at right now. I'm a dogless grouse and woodcock hunter. I've developed some spots and got permissions on areas close by, and now through other connections through the snipe hunting, I go to a grouse camp in Maine every year. This will be my 2nd year going with a bunch of guys, ex-military guys. I'm the only one not military that gets to go, but it's a lot of fun, and it's a really cool old camp. It's called Gramps Camps in Rangeley, Maine, and they're like 120 years old. I think they have some sign that says like 1903 or 1908 or something like that. But really cool old, like all pine wood log cabin type things. There's a whole bunch of them, and they prep dinners for you every day, and they'll cook woodcock for you if you bring them in. And so kind of shout out to them, because that's a great operation. Those guys are cool. But so right now, that's without a dog. I've got a couple buddies that I hunt with. And then I do the Maine, New Hampshire, and Vermont thing wherever I can get out after them. That's kind of like the big thing up in the Northeast is the grouse. Everybody loves the grouse, or partridge, depending on who you're talking to. So, yeah.
That is sweet, man. I mean, being able to get out there. I mean, that's a new thing for me with snipe. I think I've talked to one other uplander, I believe, not on the podcast though. This is outside of the podcast, and I believe he's in Florida, and that was the first time where the snipe came up for me. But
Yeah,
I still had no idea, so I'm glad I've been able to learn a little bit with that, and that's
yeah,
pretty neat. You've been able to make those connections and get to go to different states and be able to hunt with other guys. And English setters are quite fascinating dogs too. They're quite a lot of fun, and that's really neat that you're able to go and do some actual bird camps and get out there with some guys.
yeah. I mean, if it's like I said, it's kind of a funny thing. I went through my deer phase, and I still every year my dad and I go to Maine deer hunting, and that was like the big thing back in the 80s. Before I was born, he had gone up and shot some big 200-pound slammers, and that's in the Northeast. If you shoot a 200-pound dressed out buck, that's the big deal, right? Everybody wants to do that. So he had shot a few up there, and it was a long time coming. I think I was finally we've been up there for like 10 or 11 years. So it was just before I turned 30. I got to go back with him, and I shot a 200 pounder the first few days we were up there. So now it's like I checked that off the list. Now, it's just me and him going for the sake of going. We don't really look for stuff. But now it's like, oh, here's some good woodcock cover. Here's a good grouse spot. So I spend more time like, puttering around some swampy mess instead of looking for antlers when I go up. Um, but and we turkey hunt up there too, up in the big Northwoods area there, and there's not a lot of turkeys. I mean, you'll drive, you know, you could drive 30 miles before you found one, but the land is such up there. The private timberland, they've got some arrangement with the state where it's open to public recreation, so you can hunt just about anything you see up
Wow.
there, which is really cool. So that's why, like the grouse hunters, that's their some of the places I go are some of the same places that the guides will bring you. So I'm like, oh yeah, like I know this area, you know, and I always respectful. I don't go there without them. That's they're making a living off of some of these spots. And granted, anybody can hunt out there, but like I'm not one of those guys that like seeing guide will show you a spot you do really well and you go back there without them. That's kind of
Right.
crappy, but right. So you try to respect that, but yeah, it's been neat. Kind of getting back into it. It's ducks are a super interesting thing because there's so many different species and different characteristics and different ways to hunt each of them. Um, and then you get into like what I call like the brown birds, the upland birds. Um, and there's at least in the Northeast, there's a ton of tradition up here, which is really neat. If you look at any of the old like Lynn Boyd Hunt um, artists and some of the artwork done by guys when they were doing like the uh, Winchester gun catalog covers and things like that, and you'll see this old grouse hunter with a dog and a tattered like duck fabric jacket, and then he's shooting a grouse over a stone wall in an apple tree, and we still have quite a bit of that up here. And then you got so many of these guys that wrote um, the book on rough grouse hunting. Depending on what state you're from, Connecticut or Maine or New Hampshire, like everybody's got their book on grouse shooting. Um, so it's definitely neat to finally get a chance to be a part of that stuff. Um, so like we mentioned earlier, the side by side shooting. So that has its own um, subculture that's really neat. Um, so there's a fair amount of guys in these grouse camps. That's where I'm finally getting exposed to a lot more of this. Is like they all have their preferred, old double gun. Sometimes you see some semis or whatever, but mostly everybody's got old doubles, and they're just neat. So you tie back into that that old tradition, you know. So it's been a lot of fun coming back around to upland from just kind of shooting partridge on the farm, coming back around to it at my age where I have a little bit of disposable income to go and do these things and buy the things that you see out there, like a nice pair of shooting gloves or chaps or a nice vest or something like that. So it's been a lot of fun and kind of a crazy journey. And consider I'm, I always think of myself as a kid, and now I'm 40 years old, and it's a lot of years go by so far.
Definitely get it, man. That's the cool thing is like going into what you were just talking about right there is, you have that old grouse tradition, like you said, talking about some of those old catalogs. I know a lot of them, like with Field and Stream as well. I'm a big Field and Stream fan. Some of those
Yep.
old season 60s. It's really cool to be able to see that, and then, like you said, be able to be a part of that long lasting tradition. And then going into that long lasting tradition is your traditional guns and your craftsmanship with that. I really appreciate that because I love the old double barrels. Slowly getting into the over and unders now. They're starting to to grow on me here. What's it been like for you being able to like create your own and be able to give to that in that?
So the gun stocking thing is a relatively new adventure for me. So, like I said, I've shot side by side guns since I got out of high school. My first gun was Russian Baikal 12 gauge, which was actually a really good gun for what it was. I think I bought it for $325, um, and had screw and chokes and whatever. It was a nice gun. And then my first American vintage gun was a 28-inch barreled AH Fox Sterlingworth, and the thing had beautiful wood on it. It was for sale at a local gun shop here. So I started with that, and then those things are kind of akin to like old classic cars. There's things you got to do to keep them running right. You can't be feeding them, modern, um, higher pressure ammunition. You got to go with some lower pressure ammunition because when they were built, they weren't built for fast steel or Boss or Kent whatever. So you got to go to there's a company in Pennsylvania called RST Ammo. I'm sure a lot of your listeners know quite a bit about them. So you got to go and buy it. It's expensive because it's unusual stuff. And um, what's nice about that is it's gentler shooting because it's lower pressure. So you got to feed it the right ammo. You've got to take care of it, clean it more regularly than some of your modern guns with the different finishes, and you've got to take care of the wood. Uh, so it's all kind of you develop kind of a love affair with one, especially if you can shoot it well. So went through that, and I've got a stable of side by sides now and a safe, and they all have different kind of functions, and I've got things that I'm working on. And um, a couple years ago, I had bought a good solid 30-inch barreled Fox Sterlingworth for ducks. Um, Reasonable price. Gun wasn't pristine, but good barrels, good usable gun, or so I thought. Um, and that we some other time you can delve into the whole world of buying vintage side by sides, but there's podcasts all over for that. So bought this from a local guy that I've bought a few other really nice doubles from, and had it for 2 seasons. On the second season, I had been shooting it lights out. Everything I was shooting at was dropping. I was just having a good run, and I brought it with me to the lake shore in mid-December. Used to have a spot right on Lake Champlain, on a big rocky face that faces south, and we shoot golden eyes in mid-December, like in the ice flows and stuff out there. So I'm like, you know what? Like, there was a couple other guys with me. I said, I don't need to do a lot of shooting today, but if I get, a nice Drake golden eye over my hand carved decoys with this gun, that'll cap my season, pretty close to the end of the season. So, was doing that, had the gun in a floating gun case in a jet sled and had gloves on. I think it was like 8 degrees that morning, and went to grab it, and the strap of the case was caught on some, I don't know, call them Texas rigs or whatever, but like loose decoy anchors, and it caught and slipped out of my hand and fell on the rocks. And when it fell, it was at an angle. Well, guns aren't supposed to be at an angle at that point, so I knew it was broke. So I took it out, and it broke right at the wrist. And I'm like, oh my god, like,
Yeah.
Fox hasn't existed for over 100 years now, in any real capacity. So it's not like you can go to like Browning and say, hey, I need a new Satori stock, or what's that going to take. So, I finished the hunt. I always carry a backup gun. I had like a pump 870, so I finished the hunt with that as a backup gun, and then finished the season and was like, okay, I got to call somebody, try to get this fixed. I really like the gun. And looking at it, the gun had been broken probably 2 or 3 other times. Somebody had glued it, and you couldn't see inside, but it had been repaired. So it was a matter of time before it was going to go. So once I saw that, I wasn't super upset. So the world of double gun gunsmithing, like good quality side by side, the guns that they're not produced anymore. Guys that know how to work on those, it's very small. And it's all word of mouth because those guys are so busy. They don't need to advertise. They don't need to, do Facebook ads or groups or anything like that. They are all word of mouth, and they have work out for 3 years. So I contacted 3 different gunsmiths, one local, 2 out of state. The quotes were all similar. Guys were looking for like $3,000 to do a buttstock from scratch with checkering, to match your forend and whatever. And those are the 3 guys that I thought were of the quality of work I'd want to do on my guns. And this 870 cost me $800. So it's like, okay, um, I'm not going to ever get the money back out of this thing if I restocked it, no matter what. It's a Sterling worth, they're, really nice ones. Brand new condition. Guys are, barely getting $2,000 for a 12 gauge, regular run of the mill Sterling worth. So, the gun sat for a little while. I had a guy had a piece of nice walnut that I use for decoy keels. And I said, well, why don't I try this? I had contacted a guy. He was going to be able to do me some duplicates. So I sent him my broken stock, and he pieced it back together and made me 2 duplicates. Well, I got the duplicates back, and one was slightly undersized, and then one had some voids. So I used them for practice, and I had just enough wood left to make a stock to actually do this on the gun. So I said, all right. So I practiced on the first 2. The second one, or sorry, the on the third real attempt, I guess, I took it just out of a square board of American black walnut. Nice straight grain stuff. I had the board for 10 years, perfectly dry, perfect dimensions. So I traced it out and looked up some stuff on YouTube and taught myself how to inlet it, bought some scrapers, bought some chisels, did it all by hand, and got it back on there. And I was like, man, this looks pretty good. I gotta ask somebody that knows, is this any good? Did I do it right? Whatever. Because I got it all fitted, and all that aspect of it was pretty close. So I took it to a local guy, and he's a very, very fine gunsmith, and he didn't tear it apart. So I knew that I had done something.
Like, I know I did it. Something
Yeah.
at least.
Yeah, so I had done, I made a forearm for it to match out of the same piece of wood. I did an ebony inlay on the forearm tip and an ebony pistol grip cap. Put the recoil pad on it and stuff. So that's all I really need. So I did that last winter. So I brought it out turkey hunting. The gun's got 1 full choke barrel, so it's not a real dedicated turkey gun. I had a couple opportunities, but birds just, you hate to pass up on a turkey at 35 yards or 40 yards, but the gun just wasn't choked right for it, and I couldn't find ammo quick enough to get it ready for turkey season to pattern it out where I was comfortable. So I had to let 2 toms go at they were probably 35, 40 yards. I didn't have a rangefinder, but I wasn't comfortable, so I had to let them go. So I haven't shot anything other than clays with the gun as it's all put back together. But that's a whole nother. I don't know what you want to call it. It's an obsession. You get into any of this upland stuff, and it's like, oh well, I bought a kit to make my own tobacco pipe. So I made a tobacco pipe that I can carry with me to bird hunt. And now I'm going to end up restocking my 20 gauge Sterling worth, because when I bought that, the stock was short, and that same gunsmith that didn't make me feel foolish for what I had done. He gave me a beautiful piece of figured walnut. So some scrap thing he had. So I'm going to restock that gun and to my dimensions, and we'll see how that goes. So that'll be next year's project. We're cutting it a little too close to our bird season, so I don't think I'm going to get it done. But so yeah, it's been cool. That whole aspect. I brought it to a side-by-side shoot in Pennsylvania back in June, and I had 1 or 2 guys going like, "Are you taking any work?" I'm like, no, I'm not working on anybody's gun until I figure this out for real.
There you go, man. I mean, that's really neat. I mean, the whole transition to be able to get to that point. I feel like it sometimes takes things like that happen, and all of a sudden you end up with a new hobby.
Yeah, well, I saved myself, a few $1,000s, and it looks okay for my first try. I think, eventually it was a cheap gun to buy, and wood isn't that expensive, so I'll probably restock it 3 or 4 more times before I'm really happy with anything. So yeah, it's a whole new. I went from my entire decoy rig for ducks is all hand carved wooden or cork decoys, either from myself or other guys, other carvers I traded with. So I've got that. My duck gun now is my stock. I carved the stock and fitted the stock for that. I have a hand-built welded aluminum Devlin Scott boat from a guy in New Jersey. So that's all hand-built, and all my duck calls are from guys that made them themselves. So um, that's kind of when you wrap that all in, uh, either a duck hunt or whatever I'm doing, it just makes everything so much more valuable.
I agree. Yes. I completely agree with that. Whenever you're able to do it with people close to you, keep it small business, or you're doing it yourself, I feel like it always means a lot more valuable. It's got some meaning to it. I feel like instead of just going out and just buying something, you know.
Right, right, right. And I don't know, it's another one of those things like you meet a guy in a cover, if you're on public land or whatever, and you meet a guy in a cover, and it's one thing if you're talking, you both have like a brand of vest on or a brand of boot or something like that, but then the guy goes, what is that gun? I don't recognize that thing. What is it? And you're like, oh, it's a so and so. It's 100 some odd years old. And you're like, oh wow, like the wood's a little different. Well, yeah, I did that myself. You did that yourself? Yeah, I did it myself. Well, and then you break out your tobacco pipe and you're like, oh man, you made that too? And it's like, yeah, these things aren't that hard. You can figure them out, but it's just, yeah, it just adds so much more, especially, and I'll say this as a Atlantic flyway duck hunter. We're not like the guys in Idaho that can slam mallards, at will. You gotta make something more out of your duck hunt, because you're most likely going to end up with one wood duck or one black duck, and you're going home, and you spent all day out there. So you got to either have a nice gun to look at, or nice decoys to look at, or something nice to puff on when you're taking a break, or something good to eat when you're out in the blind or something. You got to make more of it, because we just don't get the duck hunting like they have in these other places that you see on Instagram, which is really nice.
That is awesome. I love it, man. That is amazing. And so another really intriguing thing, and I mean we haven't talked about this for a while on the podcast, is I mean on the other end of that barrel on a good day, you get some game, build a
Yep.
table, and you like to do a lot of your wild game cooking. You got any recipes or anything that you would personally like to see? Because I mean I completely agree. I feel like eating's like a community sport.
Yeah.
It's all I enjoy eating a lot more when I'm doing it with others, and especially if it's something that I was able to harvest in the field and be able to share that with friends and family. It just makes the experience so much 10 times better, I believe.
Yep. Yep. For sure. That's one of the things. So going back to the where I really showcase what I do, the snipe hunting, and I take these guys, we rent this Airbnb, and when I do that, I do. I usually ask them, what do you guys drink for, if you guys do drink alcohol, what do you drink for alcohol? Is it wine, bourbon, whatever? You can probably see behind me this liquor cabinet I've got. I
Oh yeah.
rarely drink anymore. Like I don't seem to have time, or I'm just tired throughout the day. I don't drink anymore, but I have a fully stocked thing, and I bring almost the entire thing with me depending on what they want. So it's super catered, and it's very, very an intimately catered thing to those guys. And then I'll build a cocktail, and I'll build a recipe from what they like. And when we do shoot some snipe to have, there's been one year we had such high water, all the birds were gone. I ended up having to come back to my freezer and grab a bunch of duck that I had to bring because we didn't kill anything. Um, but I'll usually try to build a recipe off of that. And in the fall, it's anything like a lot of your dark meat game, like your snipe. This is kind of the same as woodcock. The breasts are dark, the legs are white. Um, and then duck, because sometimes we'll do, depending on the year, I'll build a duck blind, a big duck blind for these guys in case the snipe hunting isn't any good, and we'll do combo jump shoot waterfowl or decoyed waterfowl and snipe at the same time because it's all in the same spot. Um, so a lot of what I like to do With those is mostly highlight the game as it is. My favorite thing with woodcock or snipe um, is to pluck them whole. I usually clip the wings off as there's not enough there to mess with, but keep the legs as, like a whole small, chicken laid out, and leave the heart in, because that's just a little bit that's plenty good enough to eat. And then kind of the same, like you'll see a lot of chefs do this with duck. You score the skin, let the fat render. You rub it with salt and pepper. I usually brown them in a cast iron pan, roll them around, and kind of let that fat render a little bit, maybe just a little bit of butter for lubricant, and then put them on their backs, and then put them in the oven at 400 degrees. So if you got like 6 snipe in a pan, 400 degrees for 4 or 5 minutes. Um, and they come out, kind of crispy on the outside. You can go a little bit further, but the trick with any of those, worm or microinvertebrate eating birds seems to be that if you cook them past medium rare, that's going to be terrible to eat. They start getting kind of a muddy taste, and I'm sure that's where a lot of guys talked about, well, woodcock tastes like worms. Well, either you're eating a lot of worms or you're overcooking your woodcock. So one or the other, and maybe stay out of the dirt. Don't eat so many worms. Um, but you got to have them medium rare or rarer. So I like to do that, and snipe is a very, it doesn't taste like woodcock. It's very different, and the closest thing I can tell is like green wing teal. And I know, like your way, like the Salt Lake City area, that's big on green wing teal on the Salt Lake. I don't know what those birds out there taste like because they're probably eating some sort of shrimp out there or something different. But where they are for me, if I find green wing teal in November, I'm going to find snipe with them. They're eating whatever they're eating is the same thing, and they taste identical. And the fat is a nice like milky white fat. And that's kind of my general rule of thumb on migratory birds is if the fat is white, you should be able to leave it on there and cook with it. If it's like real orange, like when you get like a common merganser, you don't want any of that fat. It's fishy, it's something else. But like hooded mergansers up my way will have that whiter fat, and that fishiness won't be there. So very simple with my woodcock and my snipe. I always cook the same way, and then I pair them with other things. So then got a guy up here that makes has a little black currant farm. They're a little tiny. I don't know if you guys have seen those out there. Little tiny black. They're kind of like a choke cherry looking thing. So he's got so he makes jams and preserves and all kinds of things out of those. So I'll get a jar from him of a black currant jelly or something, and I'll take sometimes the hearts out of the snipe or woodcock and cook those in some butter, smash them up, and then add the black currant jam. And then you get some of the nice earthy flavors of the snipe mixed in with the sweet and tartness of the jam. And a really good rule of thumb for me, and I'm by no means a chef. I'm not out here, claiming to be anything special, but I like to eat. And if you can see this video, I'm not a small dude. So make just a sauce to go over them, and it works well. Anything that's that dark fruit, so your darker cherries, your blackberries, black currants. I think this year I might try a blackberry and rhubarb. We get rhubarb that grows up here, so like if we get some of that and add that tartness back in, it's a really nice flavor. And then you serve that with like something like a Merlot, a nice red wine, something that doesn't overpower it, or something that you want to complement it with. And then root vegetables. So it kind of follows that theme. You've got the two birds that I hunt that probe in the dirt. I'm using, dark, earthy, high antioxidant fruit to complement it. And then what I serve with that is root vegetables. So carrots, parsnips, maybe some potatoes or sweet potatoes and things like that. And with a little thyme and rosemary, salt and pepper, garlic. And that all ties it really well. That's one of my favorite ones because I serve that at least one night every year when I do these snipe hunts with these guys, because and it's easy. All this stuff is fairly easy. If you got a cast iron pan or even an oven safe pan, you can do it. You don't need a lot of fancy stuff, salt and pepper, and then just make sure you're monitoring how much time it is in the heat. So you don't overcook it, and it's great. That's like the common theme with any wild game. Don't overcook it. My favorite thing right now for turkeys is simple because I work an afternoon shift. I'm a CNC machine programmer. So I work an afternoon shift, so I got to bring my dinners with me, and I'll take a turkey breast and season it and kind of tuck like the tip of it in so it's kind of all a consistent size. Throw it in the oven in tin foil for if it's a 20-pound bird, not the meat, but if you shot a 20-pound bird, the actual breast, if you put that in there for 50 to 55 minutes, you want an internal temperature of 115 degrees. Now, some people are like, oh, that's undercooked. You're going to get salmonella. Well, no. You take it out at 115 to 120 and you leave it on the counter for 20 minutes in the tin foil. And it continues to cook. And you break that open and let it cool and you slice it and that thing stays mouth-watering and juicy for a week in the fridge. So for those guys that like to, microwaving wild game is almost like a no-no. You can't do it. Like any dark meat game, you can't microwave it. It tastes awful after. This turkey, you can do it, and you can have like hot turkey sandwiches with gravy on it for a whole week for lunch.
Oh, there you go.
So those are my two favorite things. The other one would be like I do my ducks all differently. I keep my breast and my leg connected and pluck all the skin, especially on a good mallard, wood duck, green wing teal, any of that, and salt and pepper that. Throw it on the grill, and high heat, skin side down. I don't even flip them. I don't even know how much time. I usually throw those on there while having a drink, so I'm not monitoring time. It's just by feel. Take that off. They're excellent. That's my thing. I don't try to be so fancy with them because I personally like the taste of wild game. So
I love it, man. I love it. I'm gonna have to try a few of those and just give it a shot. It's been a while since we've talked about recipes and wild game cooking on here, so I'm glad that we were able to bring it on. All right, everyone. Quick shout out to our friends at Pet Commute. If you ever tried coordinating dog transport yourself, you know it's not simple. Whether it's a new pup coming home, a finished dog heading to a buyer, a field trial trip, or even, let's be honest, your wife needing her little mutt transported safely, Pet Commute handles it professionally. Rachel and I have personally transported with them, and I can confidently say they are reliable, safe, punctual, and they keep owners updated the entire trip. They offer free quotes, and if you mention Bird Camp Radio, you'll get 10% off your pet's travel. Hit the link in the show notes, comments, or our socials.
yeah,
This has been a lot of fun having you on the podcast and being able to get to know more about you. And we always like to end the podcast with one question. I ask this question to every single guest that comes on, and that is, do you have any advice that you would give upland hunters or new upland hunters, guys who've been in the field or new to the field? What kind of advice would you give to them?
I guess I would have to say, like, don't be afraid to go out there and just do it. You don't have to have the nicest gun. You don't have to have a dog. You don't have to have, $400 boots. You don't have to have any of this stuff. Keep your feet dry and get out there and poke around. I mean, you're going to have to, walk into covers to see where birds live. You're going to have to go out and do it. And I think we're coming to a point right now in where I'm at my age and the people I know. There's the people that used to really poo-poo or chastise new hunters for stuff are kind of making their way out of things. I've kind of seen the same thing with any of the volunteer organizations I work for. Those guys that were gatekeepers are kind of on the way out. I try to bring anybody, if I see anybody that's near my duck hunting spot and we happen to set up at the same time, I always offer to hunt with them. Share resources and share tips and share advice and stuff and see what we can do. That's been a big help to me, even though I've been hunting for 20 some odd years. Um, it's just you go out and do it, and if you're keep an open mind, that would be another thing. Um, don't think like just because you see something on Instagram that that's the way it has to be done. I'm at a point in my age now. I've run into some younger guys that they had no idea you could carve your own decoys. They had no idea snipe exists. There's all these things out there. You just get out and do something, and hopefully you run into somebody that is a decent enough person that'll let you know if you're doing it right or if you could be doing it better, and approach it in a proper way so they don't like scare you away from it. But you just got to get out there and do it and figure it out yourself. There's only so much, and not to harp on Instagram because I'm on there, but like there seems to be some trends there, but you just got to get out and do it. There's only so much you can do from a computer screen, I guess is what I'm trying to say. You got to get in the woods. You got to get in the woods. You got to do it. You got to tromp around, push birds up, see what's going on, see where they live, try to figure that out, and then you can take the next step in buying the expensive gear and getting the expensive dog and go down that whole rabbit hole, because there's no bottom to that rabbit hole. I'm still free falling in it, and I've done all these things and I'm still free falling. There's still more I can figure out, more I can do. And when the right time comes, it's going to be training a dog for myself to hunt over. So that'll be the next, branch of the rabbit hole, I guess, if you want to call it that. So just get out and do it. Get out and do it.
That's great.
Find birds.
That's why I ask this question to everybody. It's always good to be able to hear it from others and learn from them. And we just appreciate your time and willingness to come on the podcast and share more about you and what you're doing out there. And so thank you for coming on and giving us your time.
Well, thank you, and thank you for showcasing some of these guys that aren't brand personalities. Guys that are that's the other thing. Guys that are regular people out doing it, and even like me coming back to it in my 30s, and there's never too late to start any of this. So I'm glad that you're showcasing all kinds of different perspectives and stuff, and it's very refreshing to hear that and listen to it.
Well, we appreciate that. Thank you. We love bringing guys on from everywhere.
It's good to hear.
Thank you again, everyone, for listening to the Bird Camp Radio Podcast. I hope you enjoyed episode 43 with Eddie as much as we did. But before you go, we need to release his time for the rapid fire around the campfire game. Eddie, your time was 39.40 seconds, which puts you in 9th place on our good old leaderboard. Thank you again, everyone, for listening. And remember, you can find this episode on iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify if you want to listen to it. And if you want to watch it, you can watch it on YouTube, on our YouTube channel at Bird Camp Radio. Social media links are on Bird Camp Radio on good old Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. See you next time. You've been listening to Bird Camp Radio, where the high pines, marsh valleys, sagebrush seas, and shelf rock ledges always call us back. Until next time, keep your dogs close, your shot true, and your campfire stories ready to share. We'll see you back at camp. Don't miss out on the next episode, where we'll host our next guest on the podcast. You don't want to miss this one. Thank you.